Hey Stephanie, how you doing?
Hey, Christy. Great, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. So for this episode, I think what we want to talk about is maybe the recap on our previous episode about a one-page business plan.
Mhm.
And you had just some really great advice on the thing that is most overlooked, which is market research. And so what I thought about to continue on that conversation would be an introduction to feedback loops to help people with market research. So if this is the kind of information that you're looking for and you have a small business, then stick around because Stephanie here is a fractional CFO. And if you don't know what a fractional CFO is, it's somebody that is a complete black belt when it comes to finances and business consulting. So we're going to go ahead and get into it right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like the marketing and finance go hand in hand for business success because you need to know what you're going to spend money on and how much you have before you then go full speed ahead with Christy and her marketing strategist world.
Yeah, well, for any business, market research was what you had brought out in the last conversation is probably the most overlooked aspect of a simplified business plan. So this is part of that series about how to have agility and flexibility in business by keeping a streamlined plan. Most people have very complex plans, and that's part of the strategy. And this channel is all about strategic thinking to gain a competitive edge in business. And all kinds of aspects for business, you have to do the research. You wouldn't open a pizza shop next to another pizza shop. You could look at it that way for competition. You could look at it, is there too much competition? Can I actually get market share?
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Well,
what go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that's really obvious if you're a New England person and you see Dunkin' Donuts and you can look from one Dunkin' Donuts to the next Dunkin' Donuts and you're wondering, how did they do that? How are they still having, making enough money to be, 100 feet from each other? So
Yes.
important.
Unfortunately, when it comes to strategy, I have talked to some companies that are kind of getting clobbered with other competition.
Mhm.
And it's something that you really need to be aware of, honestly. People sometimes they have a great idea and it's in their mind like, oh, I have this talent. I'm going to go make this money myself because I've been making somebody else money. And they don't understand that maybe you live in a smaller population and there's already a large company that has the majority of that share of the customers. And the climb to the top is too high. So that's part of a strategic way of thinking that you might want to think about those things before you move ahead. And that's part of this one-page business plan. So this is an introduction to feedback loops. So this is 3 very easy feedback loops that you can implement in your business. And if you're not implementing them, then you're losing out. Everybody can do this. It is the easiest thing that you could start immediately. There are other things that you can do to strategize for your business, but let's get into it. What are the feedback loops that you recommend from a financial side? We were talking about this before the episode.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that, from a marketing expert standpoint, you wouldn't necessarily recommend a pizza shop next to another pizza shop, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't still open a pizza shop. You just would need to know, how to make yourself stand out. And that's where these feedback loops really come in. So I use the more internal feedback loops, which is customer feedback, money feedback, and team feedback. And that's looking as more internally. I know with marketing, you can look a little bit outside of it. You had some feedback loops of your own as well.
Yeah, just to put it into perspective, okay, just to define the process, okay? So a feedback loop is a process that collects data. So if you can collect information and collect data, now you can start to see patterns. This is how businesses make decisions. So when you collect data, it helps you see patterns and make decisions. And when we discussed a business plan, well, how do you stick to that plan? A plan is not a strategy. Strategy is not a tactic. Okay, so these feedback loops are a tactic in order to collect data and see how your business is going. It's like if you get a physical at the doctor, you're going to check your blood pressure. You're going to check it often, because perhaps that's a metric or a number that you need to really keep an eye on.
Yeah, and the frequency of them can depend on what type they are. So, you might do a customer feedback loop where you need to ask your customers questions about your service. You could be told that, the wait time is too long for, your service, and it could be something that you can then deal with, but if you don't know, then you can't address it. But also like we were saying with the instance of, 2 pizza shops, you could niche down and have a more specific type of business that then negates the fact that there's another pizza shop. And so I feel like
we're talking strategy.
Yes, exactly. And so, using the feedback loops, collecting the information and the data to then make decisions. And it could mean that you can still have that pizza shop. It's just going to be slightly different than the other one. And this is why. And you use that as your market research. Right. Ask your customer, ask your employees, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are we feeling? Are we overwhelmed on Mondays for some reason? What can we do different? And then also looking at your money. And that's when we're, the feedback loop for looking at your money is checking your business, so checking your income and expenses, keeping an eye on things, making sure you're paid on time. That's a really hard one. Sometimes you're so worried about, making money that you forget to actually collect said money.
Right. So let's talk about the importance. So we've now defined what a feedback loop is. A feedback loop is the process of collecting data. And if you use, so the 3 points, my points basically are the same, but they might sound a little bit different, but 3 main areas of collecting data to simplify it down. And then let's just talk about the importance of it. So what this does is it facilitates continuous improvement and adaptability in your business. So it helps you align with the market conditions. So folks, this is why she's a fractional CFO. This is why she's a business consultant, is because the very first thing that you said, which would be what I would consult if somebody came to me as a strategist, I would say, let's niche down. You have a pizza shop right next to you and you want to be aggressive and directly compete with this person because you feel like you'll win that fight. Well, this is how to do it. So folks, if you need anything like that, you're not just about, crunching numbers as far as basic bookkeeping. That's what a fractional CFO can do for you. So anyways, thank you for that information.
Yeah.
So here are the types that I have. I've got 3 types very similar to yours. So mine is customer feedback, employee feedback, and market data feedback. And once again, what those feedback loops do is it helps you align with market conditions.
Yeah.
So for you, when you look at it from a financial side, you had mentioned something about being very busy on Mondays or having a long line. How would you consult a business on how that would impact them financially?
Well, there's the really obvious one of unhappy customers don't purchase repeatedly. And so keeping an eye on your customer satisfaction, can change just how many repeat customers you have. And then it also works as your employees, keeping happy employees keeps the turnover lower, which is a very expensive thing if you've ever hired.
Wow, yeah.
So, happy coworkers, better work. And that also makes your business stronger. So, maybe it's as easy as, getting anonymous, employee information sharing, what suggestions do you guys have, or feedback on, what they're experiencing with the customers. Oh, people are coming in, later in the afternoon. Maybe we should stay open longer. And the people
next back to turnover for a second.
Yes.
Employee turnover. I really kind of want to flesh that out on as far as how detrimental that is to a company. And if it's something like, okay, so for example, I used to run a 50-seat call center. Okay. I already knew I had to hire 365 people a year. So that meant I would hire and fire one every single day. I knew the number. I knew it was going to happen. I hated it, but it was part of the business. And then we also knew that the top 30% were your closers and your really good salespeople. The middle ones were just kind of steady eddies. And then the bottom ones were just always turning over. And the top ones are actually were paying for the bottom ones when it came to our profit margins.
Mhm.
But I really would love to hear your, because what I want to do is I'll get into the methods of how to collect the data through these feedback loops, but I want to talk about employee feedback and also the continual collection of data from that fractional CFO point of view, where you're the business owner, you don't even really need to ask them. Now, we want a feedback loop, we want to collect data, but you can collect data without actually getting a suggestion box, just by being aware and what's the word I'm trying to find? Just being aware and paying attention. So can you talk about turnover, kind of what I just,
Yeah.
here?
So it could be as simple as using a Google form to create a questionnaire. And it could be asking about the benefits. Our benefits are swapping at the, usually that's when you get your annual re-up on health insurance and everything. And you can say, would you want us to switch to a different provider? Would you, you can ask those kind of questions to your employees, but also asking them for just general feedback. Do you feel like you're getting enough support in your role? Do you feel like you're getting enough guidance to succeed and to move up? I mean, the succession planning is huge right now, and there's really a terrible transfer of information between growth of positions. And so, do you have a path of growth in your position, and are you happy and going to stay there? Because if they don't see a path for growth and they don't feel seen and heard, they're going to go somewhere else.
What do you think happens to a company that has high turnover rates? What do you think their future is?
Well, I feel like their productivity is really low. Like I said, transfer of information can be really difficult. And so if you're constantly training somebody over and over, they're never getting proficient at it. And so everything's going to happen slower than it might happen anyways. Hiring is an expensive and timely process. And so, if you have to use headhunters, then you have to pay, sometimes it's 30% of the salary that you're going to offer the person. And it's time intensive to go through interviews, job postings, cost money. I mean, hiring staff is one of the more complicated parts of running a business and should not be taken lightly. And because of that, you don't want to do it more than you have to. You knew one every day, but if you were told that you would have to do two every day because of inefficiencies, you'd say, how can we reduce that as much as possible?
Right. So that's actually a really good set of information, is that if you have a high turnover rate, your efficiency and your productivity rate is going to be tanked.
Yeah, and your morale is
down.
down.
What happens to a company that holds on to somebody too long? So I've been guilty of that myself, because I don't want to train people. I'm too busy. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll just give them a little book, or maybe I'll just train them. I'll send them a video. I'll put them with a team leader and have this person. But what would be your advice for somebody like me that had this problem in the past? Like, thank God I've grown out of that. I've learned the hard way. For somebody that just holds on to an employee too long?
Well, it doesn't even necessarily mean too long. When do you know to get rid of them, and how can you justify?
Like, they're just not good. They're not good.
So part of that is I like to document that I've, tried to address it with them before, all the good HR practices. But then you have to weigh their benefit to your company. We actually just let one of our employees go today, yesterday, kind of. This is his last day, because we found that the amount of work wasn't matching with the amount of cost that he was incurring to the business.
Yeah.
So, if you can do $1,000 worth of work, but it costs $1,500 to pay you, well, then it's not benefiting anybody. And so it's just then restructuring and going, okay, what is wrong with that? Was it him?
Right.
And so, we gave instructions, and, you do your due diligence trying to get them to improve to your level, because it is very hard to hire expecting the person to be a duplicate of yourself. Nobody is going to do it exactly how you do it. And also nobody's going to treat your business like you treat your business. And so you have to have different expectations for that person anyways. But if it's, not going from you to employee, but just going employee to employee, you want to have metrics to be able to track their success. I have a client, they track their hours, and then they track the billable hours and the percentage of billable hours. And they have, guidelines for certain people. Obviously, admins may not bill 100% of their hours because they're admins, they might have some non-billable hours, but for the most part, there's guidelines for each person. and you can see in a very clear metric and who is really making their money back to the company and where the benefit is.
So here's the method. Okay, so let's talk about some methodology. So basically, what we've been discussing is this information, this feedback loop. We're getting feedback as business owners, for continuous improvements and adaptability to our business. And we generally are breaking this down into 3 key areas. And so one of the first kind of methods I was talking about was just direct interactions. As a business owner, like you said, nobody's going to treat your business the way you do. No one's going to care about it at the same level. And direct interactions and reporting. So documenting just for yourself performances, and it doesn't take much. A lot of people they could be using spreadsheets or something, but they can also use CRMs and project management software, whatever you have to keep track of it. Have a method for just your own direct interactions. It doesn't have to be a difficult thing to document. Every employee should have a file, and simply a lot of times I'll just go on my desktop and my computer and I just have, everybody has a folder. Every vendor has a folder. Now I have other software that's a little bit more complicated, but to make it super simple, just have a folder with each person's name on it. And anytime something of note, you could either just add it to a spreadsheet or just put it on anything. Sometimes I'll just copy and paste a message from a screenshot and throw it in their folder. And then I make sure that when I label it something really descriptive, like interaction, or I could just label it something like red flag, green flag, beige flag, something's wrong, or here are the details about this project. And I have other sophisticated things that do the tracking for me, but depending on what tools you have, collect the data you want to. It doesn't have to be complicated, is my point. And it will give you a ability to facilitate continual improvements and adaptability. That is the key, is to break it down into 3 types of feedback loops that help you adapt and keep your business growing and streamlined. Going back to our one-page business plan, you keep it simple. Keep it simple and keep going, and then learn these different things. When you get the feedback, I learned this from a very wise person when I was young. I'm very blessed to have learned business from my father and my grandfather. So God bless them. At any rate, when a truth is revealed to you, listen to it, period. Really, because we talked about holding on to an employee too long that is a drain on resources and morale. Just pay attention to it. So that's the first method, is direct interactions. And we also talked about surveys and reviews. So for a customer feedback has a huge benefit. So we have the employee feedback, which would be, some methods could be regular team meetings. So you don't have to have them all fill out forms. You want to have, I would think, just for my own personal advice, when you talked about employee morale and making them feel heard, direct interactions for regular team meetings is the easiest way. I mean, you can just literally pay attention and make notes of it, and then just have a meeting. We have a meeting every Monday at 11 o'clock, whether we need it or not.
Yep. No, we did those too.
Yeah, we have a format. It's a silly, easy format. The first 15 minutes is whoever is low man on the totem pole comes first. And then middle management comes second. And then admin recaps at the end. And that's it. And we're there for we go, okay, what's high priority? What's low priority? And what's medium priority? That's it. Simple.
Yep. That's all you need. Put out the fires and plan your week.
That's right. But knowing it and having the one-page template that says, okay. And as a matter of fact, if anybody wants this one-page template, we'll provide it to you in a PDF format. We have 3 types. I have a one-page business template for a coffee shop, for a pet care business, and for a auto repair shop. Only because I kind of felt like it sort of broke up the types of businesses. One would be food service. One is, more of a service kind of tradesman. And then the other is for, I don't know, hospitality or something. But anyway, keep it simple. You want to have your, let me just go ahead and give you a couple of information on the template. So it will give you an action plan. It'll give you a revenue model. It'll talk about marketing strategy, and it'll talk about your core values, and also help you define your value added proposition, and it'll also give you very pointed metrics for success. And so a very simplified, business plan, and then these 3 metrics, you'll probably be 60 to 75% more likely to succeed. Matter of fact, let's pull up a key statistic. Let's see here. I think it's time for a key statistic. The importance of market research in business success. So, according to SimilarWeb, on the role of market research in business growth highlights, it means, okay, I messed that up. I didn't read this right. Business growth highlights that consistent monitoring of market trends I can't say it. It works.
Well, I have a statistic I can give you.
Well, let me finish.
Okay,
You're 70% more likely to achieve long-term success.
Okay.
So if you institute, and this is according to SimilarWeb, market research, consistently monitoring these things, you're 70% more likely to have long-term success. Now that's compared to 2/3 of all businesses failing within the first 3 years. 2/3 of all businesses. So of that 1/3 that succeeds, you're 70% more likely to have long-term success. What's your key statistic?
I have 2. I have 85% of companies using feedback loops report improved customer satisfaction. And then organizations with structured employee feedback processes see a 14.9 reduction in turnover rates.
Say that one again.
Organizations with structured employee feedback processes see a 14.9% reduction in turnover rates.
Wow.
So having an employee, response process decreased their turnover by 15%, essentially, which is, just asking employees 15% less turnover, that seems like a no-brainer. One thing I like to use and have used all the way from, small business to General Dynamics is called just a risks and opportunities spreadsheet. And that's where you can put your feedback, because it should either be a risk or an opportunity. And so I like to put, as my monthly annual process, something that I check in with regularly, which you could have a reminder to do it quarterly. I feel like that's an always easy standard way to just check in on things and check against it. But I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay. So let me comment then. So on your reduction in turnover, 15% doesn't seem like a high number, but it really is, because if you have 10 employees and 1.5, so sometimes it's 1 and sometimes it's 2, you're turning over. That's a lot. That's too much. So a 15% reduction is, did I do the math right on that? Anyways, you want any kind of reduction in turnover that you possibly can. And that data collection of just having a weekly meeting, like the structure that I gave you, first 15 minutes is low man on the totem pole. Then the next one up is middle management. And then the admin comes in at the end. And then you just have your project manager take notes every meeting. And then we just have a spreadsheet that tracks what's going on in our meetings. And there's your feedback loop right there. And then you just make it a point. You find out really what makes a happy employee. And when you're in those meetings, you have those direct interactions, and it's simple. You do it once a week, once a month, once a quarter. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Let's do one more statistic and then we'll go back to it. So the impact on feedback loops on customer satisfaction. So I got the same one. This was from HubSpot's 2022 customer experience trends. Okay. It report that businesses with structured feedback loops build better relationships and trust with their customers, and it leads to a higher retention rate. So I know your fractional ninja brain will talk about the long-term value of a customer. So if you have an 85% increase in customer satisfaction, how does that relate financially, Stephanie?
Well, if you are calculating your monthly income and you know that 85, what was the statistic? 85?
85% increase in customer satisfaction and higher retention rates.
Okay, so you have a metric on the satisfaction, which might not actively translate into services or sales. But for the most part, if you say, 85% of people are more satisfied based on, a happy customer, X amount of percent will make another purchase. And so you could kind of look at your repeat customer sales and say, okay, our person usually comes in 7 times in their lifetime. If they're happier, let's take 85% of that. You can use the numbers to, do some guesstimating, and then go from there with your business plan.
Well, I can say from a marketing strategist point of view, that's a huge number, and it's awesome because an 85% more satisfaction rate means more positive reviews. If you go onto Google and you go, hey, I'm looking for service near me, and then who are you going to choose? The guy that has 100 reviews or the guy with 2 reviews and 3 stars?
Yeah, right. I look at reviews for sure. Well, and you can talk about, as a marketing strategist, how that changes how your business looks online.
It turns into profit, dollars, and lead generation. Do you want 1 customer or 10 customers? If you have an 85% chance, so if you have a 70% chance of long-term success and you're implementing these things, now you've got an 85% increase in customer satisfaction. That could translate into like, wow, you have twice as many reviews as the next guy. That's why you're going to succeed. It's not because you're working hard and you're doing your due diligence. You're instituting simple feedback loops on a simplified business plan that helps you take away all the complexities of your business and demystify the numbers, demystify, I don't know how to figure out what my profit margins. I don't know where to start. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
When you made a great point, if you're already going to ask people for information and feedback, you might as well ask them to leave a review, and then you have the stars and the, kudos behind it of, maybe some details about their experience. I had a great meal at this restaurant. I ordered this, they did a special thing for my birthday, whatever it is. But now not only do you know, but now everyone else knows. And so that's a great part about the feedback, is that it can be public feedback as well. Obviously, you can ask some internal feedback to make decisions, but it can also be public feedback that then helps your marketing profile.
Well, this is a perfect segue to the very last feedback loop. So we've talked about the method, what it was. We defined it that it's a collection of data. We talked about customer feedback, employee feedback. Here's the last and final one that I feel is, I don't know if it's the most important. I don't think you could really give one more weight than the other, but it's market data feedback. Market data feedback is what is trending. Let's just say, for instance, that we'll go to the coffee shop, because that's the business plan that we have for this specific episode. I know we talked about a pizza shop too. So let's just say a food service, Well, what if a law came around? I remember there was a law sometime in New York City where soda was illegal or something weird like that. And now restaurants also have to put like calories on their menus. And there's certain things that are trending, right? Well, there was a lot of pushback from the public of like, I can eat what I want. You can't tell me what to do. And then on some things they got rid of, other things they liked and they kept. Most people, at least I know for me, I like to see the calories. I want to know what's in it. I want to know. Yeah. Okay.
Calories is one information thing I could care less about. I will look at the ingredients. I will, nope, not the calories.
Right. But sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes things are a little bit, they look good. I'm like, oh, that's 4,000 calories. I'm not going to eat that. And then I'm like, all right, I'll look at the salads.
I look at unit price when buying something at a grocery store. I'm not looking at the calories. I'm looking at the unit price.
Okay, so here you go, folks. So now here's 2 opposing things. This is a good thing. This is an illustration of how important market data collection is. So what are the methods? So you monitor industry trends and competitor analysis. Just like we said, does my competitor have more reviews than I do? Read them. Okay. What's happening in this industry? Is there a new pizza shop coming to town? Is there a new coffee shop? Why are they able to get, like, why can Starbucks get so much more money per drink than Dunkin' Donuts? Is it more?
Absolutely. Or
Yeah,
charge that much per drink for sure. I know there's a coffee shop that just opened in Pittsfield, and they're niching differently by having a dark room and also having photography classes and stuff. And it's, but they also have a nightlife because you have to be able to, adapt to the cost prices. But I doubt that their coffee costs as much as the Starbucks one. So what makes them, have that clout and be able to, be the Stanley Cup of the coffees?
that's right. So when we talked about the other collection points and the other feedback loops, those were more internal changes. Market data research helps you understand and adapt to the external environment. What is in the marketplace? How can I gain that market share? So your original suggestion of niching down, and we started talking about, this is why you want a fractional CFO. This is why, and believe it or not, it's not as expensive as you would think. Hiring a part-time fractional CFO is highly recommended. People pay accountants, they pay tax planners, they do it annually. It's something that you should at least investigate to do quarterly for your business to help you get in line and to get you on the right track. I had just segueing, I had a consultation with a business associate that was like, I don't know where to start. And I have all of these things happening, and it just, the processes were really not organized. And I'm like, you know what? I really want to help you with your marketing. But the first thing I really want you to do is get your accountant in here and get your books so that you can see where the money's going and where it's coming from. So anyways, I'll segue from that. But the flexibility checklist that we had from our other episode will include that here as well. And this is so that you can keep your business informed on internal changes, external changes, and how to have a continued adaptability. And that's why you want to be flexible. So let me see. Scenario planning would be the next topic of discussion. So if you're paying attention to the external, you're paying attention to the internal, and you're getting these feedback loops by, most of all, just direct interactions. But you can also collect data through reading case studies, doing surveys. There's lots of ways to find out the information. We're savvy, we're smart people. If you need help with that, easy, that's easy. The meetings, the spreadsheets, it's not difficult to just pay attention and to document these things. But scenario planning is how to develop these strategies. It's how to take now you've got the feedback, you've collected the data. Now you want to develop strategies for just potential future scenarios. What is the scenario? Okay, so I'll give you an example. We have technical people. We have computer scientists. We have programmers, servers. So let's just take our server, for example. If I have a company that has 2 websites on this server, and I go, oh, that's cool, I'm going to put another 2 websites on the server. What happens when that server goes down?
All the sites go down.
All my customers freak out. That's scenario planning. So we do what's called co-location. It's kind of like having a battery backup or a generator for your home. Can you speak on that financially? I know in our last discussion about a simplified plan, one thing that you brought up that no one else brought up was, what do you do when people don't pay their bills?
Yeah.
Scenario planning 101. Can you give us another example?
Yeah. Here's one. COVID. No one expected that to happen. And a lot
Act of God.
Threw them for a loop. You're not expecting the world to shut down for months at a time. But there are businesses that had some cushions in place. If all of a sudden the world is shut down for whatever reason and whatever length of time, things obviously slow pay even more. So, during that time, people got paid slower from the government. That's one where usually it's on time. Sure, you're Joe Schmo down the street might pay you late, but usually the banks, the government, like those things are going to pay you on time because it's a bigger industry. When COVID happened and things shut down, everybody was shut down. And so, you know, the buffers in there in your, just having enough cash in your bank account to continue paying your payroll because while you waited to get paid was a huge concern for people. And then that's why the government came out with the PPP and other types of protection things, because not every business could plan for those, but you can plan for slightly less drastic, you know, situations in life. Could be you getting sick. That's one as solopreneurs very rarely plan for, but is very important, because if you're not going to be doing it and you're the main driver in getting things done in your business, you know, it's going to hit the fan. Also, you know, you getting sick, but also you needing to, you know, you have a death in the family, anything that takes you away from your day-to-day work. How is it going to continue going? Are you going to continue getting paid if you're not staying on top of people? Are you going to continue, paying your bills? And, you know, is anything set up automatically? Are there checks and balances? And also, as we were talking about transfer of information, you know, are there backups for these kind of things? You know, is there a backup so that somebody besides you knows how to do everything? And that's a lot of stuff that the what if scenarios can come into. That's is right. Just theft. With me, what goes wrong?
Theft.
Yes.
Theft is a big thing in any business.
Cybersecurity is a huge one. You can probably talk more to that. I'm not as great with it, but it's huge.
Oh, security measures now are becoming extremely important. And yes, if anybody wants any information about that, please reach out to me, because we actually have some really interesting tools. And I've been watching, and that's a market trend for my business. That's extremely important. Also, the automations, the advent of artificial intelligence. So fraud has really gone up. And so what happens a lot of times is, like, let's just talk about a business where they think their vendor is called. It's a fraud. They got scammed. Their vendor called and said, look, you didn't pay your bill. You're like, oh, sorry, I'm really busy. You pay the bill. And you're like, oh my God, I paid that bill twice. And now, you know, so this type of thing is actually very important. I'll give you another example. In 2008, when the real estate crashed, that was a big change. So I happened to be doing mortgage lead generation at that point. I saw it coming a mile away. Because we were doing business with Bank of America, AmeriQuest, we were doing business with Countrywide, all these huge banks. And so I can tell you exactly what happened in about 1 minute. 9/11 happened. They dropped the rates like crazy, and 80% of all Americans refinanced their home. And so we were getting, this was the very beginning. It was right at the .com era, and it was all fraud. There were literally bankers taking suitcases with $3 million of it and just running off to the Bahamas. And all these people got so upset about the bank bailouts and all that. That's why they got upset. So for me, right, we were just doing lead generation. We were getting 5,000 mortgage lead applications every single day without even trying. I want to refinance. I want to because these people had 7% interest rates, and now they were getting like 3 and 4% interest rates. So those kept coming in. Well, Bank of America saw hyper growth. AmeriQuest saw hyper growth. That was the lending tree days. Remember the tagline, when bankers compete, you win. Well, it was amazing. So they'd call me up. I'm in the marketing department. Can you get me more leads? Can you get me more leads? I'm like, yeah, I mean, they're coming in. Okay. So now I'd be like, well, it started off, we need A credit people. Here you go. Have the A credit people. Well, I said, well, what are you going to do with the poor credit people? We don't want them. We don't want them. Well, what happened was, the whole market got saturated. So this is an example of watching the industry trends and being aware. So now if you're in the real estate market or, you know, the loan origination sector, you probably saw this coming too, because you would see the wholesale lenders say, okay, the criteria to get a loan, you had to have A credit. 3 months go by. Well, now you can have B credit. 4 months go by, a year goes by. Well, we'll take the D credits. By the end of this,
I said, you have a pulse. That's good.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. So by the time that bubble popped, so it was hyper growth. I mean, just think about a bubble, a balloon filling and filling and filling and filling and filling with all this paper, you know. By the end of that, I had a direct friend, and she knew not to ask me advice about her mortgage. She intentionally avoided getting advice from me because I would have told her not to do it. She got an 80-20 loan on stated income, and the debt to income ratio was something like 200%. And I'm like, well, you're going to get foreclosed. And she did get foreclosed. So anyway, I'm ranting. but industry trends.
Yeah, pay attention. I mean, I'm seeing it in as simple as our area in the Berkshires, there are less accountants. There are very few CPAs coming into the area, some accountants, bookkeeping type professions without CPAs, but very few. And so as people are retiring and aging out, that's something that we've noticed is that, what do we want to do to deal with that as a accounting profession, but also as a small business owner? What can we do to make sure that our area doesn't lack financial resources in a few years when everyone's retired?
Right. And that's actually, I really appreciate the help that you've given me on that, because you kind of made it aware that I can call you even if I need something simple done, if I just need you to catch up on a few receipts. So I know that you're a black belt ninja of CFO, fractional, accounting and tax planning, but it really is nice to know that I can contact you if I need you to just catch me up on my books at the end of the year, or catch me up, quarterly on some just, quarterlies or something like that. So I think that's good too. It's not all this advanced stuff, just the simple day-to-day maintenance and keeping ahead of the curve.
And keeping up with the constant changes in the tax laws. We had to do the BOI requirement, and then something just came out that said, no, that's unconstitutional. We're going to pause on that. And so now everyone's waiting to see if we need to do this requirement that was supposedly done by the end of this year. Yeah, and so they're constantly going to change things, and you're going to get letters from the IRS in Massachusetts, and you're not going to always know what they are. And so being able to confidently call someone and say, what is this asking? Is, do I need to do anything? A lot of our clients like that. And, to go back into your court, I don't know anything about the marketing aspect. And so I came to you with 3 websites and said, help me, please. And you've been untangling my mess because I stay in my lane and, I know what I do, but I don't know how to necessarily present that to the public in the best, most cohesive way for people to understand what I do and how I can help them.
Yeah, Google's algorithm has to be strategized. It definitely has to be strategized. But I called Charlie the other day, which is your husband, his partner. And I was like, what is 4884? And what do I do? He's like, Christy, it's like 2 seconds here. Just fill it out. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was something very simple. So sometimes people will think, oh, a fractional CFO, that's too expensive and I can't afford it. It's really, you're so approachable, and it's good to know that you have those credentials for when I do get a letter from the IRS and I am concerned. It's like, if I have a heart condition, I'm not going to go see a yoga, professional. I'm going to go see a cardiologist. So if you need a cardiologist for your tax planning, Stephanie's the person to contact. Okay. So let's wrap this up. I want to have another key statistic. If I can talk about this here. Let me get in here and find my key statistics. I love them. Scenario planning. So that's what we were talking about, is scenario planning. So 80% of companies that actively engage in scenario planning report greater confidence in navigating market uncertainties. So let's repeat that. 80% of companies that actively engage in scenario planning report greater confidence in navigating market uncertainties. Let me put this into context. So the automobile market, one of our hypothetical businesses is an auto repair company. Well, that market has really changed because the price of vehicles have really gone up. Since the interest rates have gone up, in order to buy a vehicle, the monthly payments have gone up, and also the length of the term of the loan has gone up, and also the overall price, because when fuel cost goes up, everything's being imported. So overall, like, I was surprised that a new minivan is something like $50,000. I thought that would be my go-to, but so let's talk about the results. We're talking about collecting data and market trends. Well, guess what? People are holding on to their vehicles. And what does that mean? Repair shops are doing much better. And vehicle sales companies. So now what if you're a vehicle sales company for a new car dealership that have, floor planning fees and are fighting this economy? So there's a strategy for both sides. What are you going to do if you're a car repair company and you're booking out 3 weeks in advance and you can't get the stuff done? Well, what do you if you're an auto sales business and you're just not getting the length of, the number of business. So that is when you actively strategize. We're going to go back to our monthly meeting for employee feedback. We've got customer feedback, we've got employee feedback, and then we've got market feedback. So 3 categories. Your weekly meeting, make it a topic of each meeting, period. The first 15 minutes you do this, the second 15 minutes you do that, the third 15 minutes you do this. Okay, now on the 1st and the 15th, we make sure we recap and we track it and we document it. It's not difficult. It might sound like, oh, they're talking about a lot of stuff, but not really. Okay. So here's the source of this. This was a research published by the Harvard Business Review in 2023. So if Harvard says that if you do this stuff, okay, 80% of you will have greater confidence and greater results. And not only that, but you'll be 70% more likely to succeed long term. And so this is the benefits of regular business plan reviews. So you keep it simple, you break it into chunks, and you do it frequently, which will keep you agile, flexible, and ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think scenario planning can be very powerful. I'm working with a private school right now to do scenario planning for enrollment and donations and salary planning. You need to know a mixture of things. So if tuition, if we keep tuition at this rate, what happens if we get more students? What happens if we get less students? What happens if we pay people a little more? What happens, and so you can do multiple scenarios where you say, okay, this year we're going to do 100 students. This year we're going to say we have 150 students. And you just have the math done out in each possibility so that you can look at it and go, okay, if we have 150 students, we can afford to have, one more paraprofessional, or, we can hire a school nurse, or we can, we don't need as many donations that year. Or, okay, if we have less students, we need to ask for more donations to make up the difference. And so I feel like scenario planning can be very, very powerful with making decisions. And it doesn't have to be something that's done often. In this case, I think they were doing it annually, and then you're checking in on that scenario. And then if you fall off that plan or you need to retweak it, you at least have these other guidelines to base it off of.
Right. And I want to bring up one more point about scenario planning. So I think there could be, for some people, some confusion on how many scenarios should I plan for? Do I have to plan for everything? You don't have to plan for everything. That's a really good example that you gave, Stephanie, because it's a direct example of their customer type and customer profile. And sometimes they have slow times and sometimes they have busy times. So you don't have to really worry about, you can't really plan for an act of God, like COVID or like a real estate crash. Sometimes you see it coming. If you're in that, business, then you would have more insight. You'd have more light, more insights, but you really can't plan for that. So the unexpected, you just have a savings account. You know what I mean? That's all it is. It's not, that's that scenario. So the act of God scenario, I don't know. I just make sure I have my grab and go bag, which is my cash and whatever that is. I need a fire extinguisher. Okay. Got one of those.
Oh my goodness. Do you not have one? I have them everywhere.
Right. I know, especially if you had a fire. But as far as the scenario planning, when you talk about enrollments and students, it's directly related to your business. So I'm going to give you one more example to help you keep everything simple, because the idea with these conversations, we're going off on these threads, but it's keep it simple. One-page plan, a flexibility checklist, and 3 data collection points. Okay. 1 meeting a week. These are just simple rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It keeps you on target. It's like a train on the tracks. Keep it on the tracks. Sometimes you got to pivot, but it's just another track. Keep it simple. So another scenario that I'll give you a good example is prices increase. And so a lot of things happen when customers of mine, which are businesses, so businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, they want to pass the fees that they get increased on to the customer. In that scenario, what do you do? And the number one thing that people ask me about is, I don't want to pay credit card fees. So if they pay in cash, they get one price. If they pay with a credit card, I want to surcharge them. In that scenario, what do you do? This is very important. So this is what you do. You get your customer feedback by looking at reviews. You get market trends. What happens to businesses and how is their reputation affected when they pass fees onto their customers? So you don't just say, hey, I have this idea, I'm going to do this. You plan the scenario. You say, all right, I'm feeling pressure, a scenario I can see looming. How am I going to plan this out? And what is going to be my reaction so that I have customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction in production, and I'm ahead of the marketing trend? So we found that it's not a good look. You can't do it. You can't just say, hey, you're using a credit card, so now your bill is going to be $50 more. Don't do it. Just wrap it up into the price. Give everybody plenty of notice that you're, increasing your prices, and that's the price. Everybody pays the same price, whether it's cash, check, or charge. That's what we found out. How did we find that out? We read on it. We looked at it.
Yeah,
So,
probably asking people how they feel about it. I know a lot of people ask about, well, how do I know how much to charge? And that's where you decide right there. You have to figure out what your overhead is and then what all your extra expenses are going to be. And you might need to round up because, some people are, they are the exception, but usually it goes by the same rule for everybody.
Yep. And so if you're having problems figuring out what you're going to charge, download our free business plan template because it gives you revenue models. It gives you metrics to track. It gives you a footprint. So one more statistic and then we can go ahead and wrap this up. Okay. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's our bonus of collection method, the effectiveness of social media feedback. Now, another study, which I don't remember when it was taken, but Sprout Social said that up to 90% of people will engage with brands on social media. Now, yes, 90%. So if you think about how you decide if you're going to do business, they might just look at your profile and click on your pictures. They're engaging with you. They're not telling you this, but they're there. So social. Go ahead.
The important part right there is your personal social media is up for viewing if you're a business owner.
That's right.
That ties together. I have to remind my brother who's a new business owner that now you are the face of your business.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That exactly. And that's the feedback that, direct interaction and paying attention, collect that data, look, listen, learn. We call it the 3 L's, look, listen, learn. So here's the statistic. Companies that leverage social media polls and interactions for customer feedback experience a 24% increase in customer retention rates. So stack them. When you regularly collect feedback, you're 85% more likely to have customer satisfaction. I think that was the statistic. Let me go back and see what that one was. Did I get that one wrong? I don't know.
Well, one of the things that we try to remind ourselves when we, speak to people is to always ask for referrals. And so I feel like it comes along with that request, when you ask for feedback and referrals. As a business owner, I feel like you should always be asking for feedback and referrals. So it can be a part of your normal process in your normal life. It doesn't have to be a formal situation every time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Feedback is just like, how is everything going? And buttoning up your services.
Yeah.
Just customer feedback. I mean, just calling them because you can provide feedback to them too. You start the conversation, a courtesy call goes a long way. Hey, I hadn't heard from you. How's everything going? Or, hey, just wanted to give you a call. You just bought a car from us. How's it running?
Yeah, no, it all works. And to go back to your, kind of what if planning scenario with all this, it can be as simple as a new business starting out. I was helping a daycare business. She opened a daycare in her home and she's trying to plan how much to pay herself and also, how much to save for taxes. And it's based on how many kids she has. And so we have a little chart that we made because kids are, different ages is different dollar amounts. And so we have, okay, if you get one more little kid, you'll get this much. And we have it so that she can go, okay, I think I'm going to get 3 more little kids, next month. She can start looking at, okay, next month I could pay myself more. I can put some more in taxes. And it just helps her plan her workflow as a small starting out business. So it doesn't have to be, you have this big business. You can plan the what ifs at any part in your business, especially when you're first starting out.
Wow, Stephanie, you never cease to amaze me. Who does that? My accountant would never make me a chart like that. Wow. I mean, I'm really blown away. So there you have it. That's amazing. Just to give her a chart. No one has ever offered to do that for me. So
you got to break it down to their level. She's not going to understand complex financial spreadsheets. She just wants to run a daycare and be happy. So
well, there you have it, folks. There you have it. Stephanie, black belt in financial fractional CFO. You're like I don't even know, a phenom of something. I mean, and break it down to something simple like a spreadsheet like that. That's great. No one's ever offered me that. They're like, oh, well, they talk like the techie people sometimes talk, where it's like you might as well be talking to, a rocket scientist, and your eyes glaze over and you're like, so really good.
Thank you.
Can I say I'm proud of you? That's great. I love it. Okay, so effectiveness of social media feedback. Companies that leverage social media polls and interactions for customer feedback experience a 24% increase in customer retention rates. A 2022 Sprout Social Report on social media trends illustrates how engaging directly with audiences online fosters loyalty and retention. I don't have the statistic now, but I think that most people under a certain age actually prefer to just direct message, so.
Yeah, anyway. I know that my friend's whole marketing process is they just DM people through social media. And, it's kind of the older fashioned online business coach guru or life coach guru kind of situation where it's very much social media driven, very much DM heavy, and, video presence and kind of, showing up on social. And that's the whole business model right in itself, is just completely using social media. So I know a lot of successful clients or, successful businesses that have made all of their marketing pushes through social media. So there's definitely a lot of power to be had there.
Yep. And if you don't have a social media presence, reach out to me, because we have extremely inexpensive. I don't use YouTube to sell my services, but you brought it up, and I mean, very inexpensive. These automations and stuff like that, where you could just set it one-time fee. All platforms. Yeah. So everything. You could even post to Reddit, but you could do LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and the way the schedulers work now is you just post to everything. Mm-hmm. But we have catch-up programs where, like, the last company that I worked with was a travel company, and they just didn't put anything up there since 2015. So I was like, all right, so we kind of have to spam their wall a little bit. It's not a bad thing, but we just put a lot of posts, because in social media, things just kind of, you have to scroll. So what we do to help them is we just put a very high volume up there so that the person can scroll. So say, for example, for him, it was like 2015. So we just put like 15 or 20 posts in one day. Then the next day we put 10 posts. Then the next day we put 10 posts. Then the next day we put 5. Then we kept doing 5 a day for a while, so that when the people started to scroll, you could also see the dates. So when they were at the top of the feed, it didn't look like we spammed.
Yeah, right.
So they had to scroll more than 2 or 3 pages, because people will only scroll so far. So that's what the social media catch up is. And I call it kind of spamming their wall, but I probably should use a better word for that. We fill the scroll, and it's just a one-time fee. And then what we do is we take and we hook up the automation software so that it drips out over the next 30 to 60 days. And it's just a cheap one-time fee. So anyways.
Well, and the point of that is for people to see the brand name, to see the business's name, to see, whether it's, I know there's different types of posts, whether it's informational or can't think of all the other ways that you can do it, but educational, those kind of ones. And so you probably have a nice mixture of, different types of posts to do. I know I've like LinkedIn polls. I always like those. Those are fun. But I think it's like, how many times do people have to see you to recognize you? I know there's a lot of statistics around that. But yeah, what you're talking about is just being top of mind for people. So they see you over and over and they recognize, you know, your logo, your name, your brand colors, all that kind of stuff, and you stick. And then when they go, oh, I need, you know, so-and-so to come plow my driveway, they've seen, you know, ads for your business, they've seen posts about it, they've seen pictures, you know, and that's what you're saying, you know, you build up that authority with your marketing purposes.
Exactly.
You know?
That's part of the strategy. So yeah, it's very important to just be there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be that quiet voice, that always there. I'm here when you need me.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of like my grandpa. I didn't always go visit him, but I always knew he was there.
Exactly.
You know, and so it was kind of like that. So with social media, people just want to see that you're active. If you're not active, they see that as a bad sign.
Sure.
That you must not be good at what you do, or, you know, they have these assumptions, you know, and then you are asking how many times does someone have to see you in order to do business with you? It depends on if they're in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in the market, like if I'm looking for a car, just think about that. How many cars are you going to look at before you actually buy one? You know,
Probably a lot.
Now, so say you buy one, you're not going to be in the market for a car for a long time.
Yeah.
And you might go back to the same dealership to buy your next car.
Mm-hmm.
But that dealership has to always be there, steady, 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 always there, always available.
Well, good example. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Good example is like yesterday was my birthday. And so I was getting
happy birthday.
Thank you. I was getting emails from the different businesses that I'm on their email list. So I got a happy birthday from my dentist. I got a happy birthday from some charities that I, you know, have donated to or, you know, bought memberships to, and they all say happy birthday to me. And because of that, I mean, my insurance company sent me a happy birthday. MCLA, the college I went to, sent me a happy birthday email with like a little alum singing song kind of thing. And so just being in, you know, so that's one where they want donations from me. So being able to say, I said happy birthday to you on your, you know, and I sent you an email. Okay, well now when I'm thinking about who to donate to, I remember the people that made the effort, you know, whether it was just sending an email or whatever it was, they made an effort to me. And so now I'm more likely to do business with them, to recommend them, and to also, you know, necessarily donate my money to them.
Yeah, I love birthday coupons.
Oh, yep, I got those. Starbucks, we got my Starbucks drink. You know, I got the Ben and Jerry's sends one out. You know, you really have to like pay attention for those ones. But they're great, you know, and they're a great way to drum up some extra business. You know, I'm going to go to Ben and Jerry's probably not by myself. So mine might be free, but then everyone else is getting one.
That's
so
right.
There's a lot of ways to, you know, boost your business without a lot of extra work. And it could just be the effort and paying attention. Like I've said before, my aunt with her jewelry business, you know, she always said happy anniversary, happy birthdays. She sent those out so that when people knew they had to buy the gifts, they were top of mind. And they knew that they would take care of them, and they remembered every year that they would buy, you know, things to complement the pieces. Like you really build a connection with those people. And that's, you know, that's the old family jeweler, you know, jewelry store style.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's why I always bring it back to my dad and my grandpa. I love them. I had such a great relationship with them, and it's just, yeah, good times, nostalgia.
Being from entrepreneurship families is definitely a different situation for sure. You've seen the ups and the downs.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did grow up in a small business family. So that is I think it is a kind of it's a personality trait almost now, you know? Yeah. So here, let's just wrap this up. So what we're really talking about is collecting and analyzing feedback. And that is a feedback loop. You receive feedback, you act on it. You receive feedback, you act on it. That's why it's a feedback loop. And the 3 easy feedback loops that every business should institute is hearing from their customers, hearing from their employees, and hearing from market trends or collecting data from market trends. So you can review sales data, customer retention rates, lead conversion stats, all those types of things. And then you want to align your business plan to that feedback. This is the scenario planning, and that helps you update your goals, prioritize I don't know. I can't talk today. Prioritize resources and revise your strategy. And then you can integrate your scenario planning. There's also other tools like data visualization tools that you can use. But in the end, you want to stay flexible, communicate changes, and then reassess your tools and processes in the end. And there you have it, folks.
Nice and easy. Yep. It's just a fancy way to, summarize that perfectly, that big, long discussion of, feedback loop, just asking questions and making the changes based on those questions. It's really a very simple concept, but then you can apply it. And the loop, that's the important part. We always ask, a lot of times we hear things, but it's actually taking the action that is associated with it. Because, if you know about it, but you're not changing anything, well, that's not helping you.
Right. And if you have a business, what are the emerging trends in your business? If you have employees, have you talked to them lately? Do you have a schedule? If you have, a customer base, do you send them birthday emails? Is that something that could benefit you? If you have any questions at all, you want anything at all, this is YouTube. All this information is free. Just reach out to us or leave a comment. We'd be more than happy to, answer your question directly. We'll also make some resources available in the description for the flexibility checklist is a really good one. And the one-page business plan, I think I'll put 3 of them down there. I'll put one for the coffee shop, the auto shop, and the pet industry. They're all kind of the same, but just pick the one that you think is, close to your scenario, and it'll help you with your revenue model, your value added proposition, and it'll give you some key metrics to track. But that's it. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
That was so much fun. Thank you.